The next step in the accountability dial is what we call the boundary. And I want to show you what the boundary is by way of an example. It's a question that I've asked leaders and managers over the years in a room full of people or even in a private coaching session. And they're frustrated about one behavior or another, or this person doesn't do this, or this person doesn't do that, or why doesn't the team operate in this way? And I'll ask them, and I'll say, okay, I want to give you an opportunity to think about the future. And this person or this team is going to operate in this way, behaving in exactly this manner for the next 10 years. How do you feel about that? No, absolutely not. That's awful. I don't want that. Okay, how about just for the next 5 years? No, it has to change much sooner than that. All right, how about 1 year? No, it should be, no, I don't want to wait a year for that type of change. They should be able to get this much sooner than that. Okay, how about 90 days? And it's right there where every single time I ask that question, people turn their head. Maybe I could wait 90 days if I saw that change was happening. So that's what the boundary is about. It's about articulating what that boundary is, what that time frame is. The core principle of what you're trying to accomplish in the boundary part of the accountability dial is to establish what good looks like by when. What is the change that you're really looking for in specific detail? Remember, you've used the mention, the invitation, you've had a series of conversations about a piece of behavior or something about the work that needs to change, where you want to see growth happen to the next level. And now's your opportunity to get really specific with them. There are 3 critical outcomes to a boundary conversation. First, together you've defined specifically what does the behavioral change look like? How will we know if this person made this change or not? Second, you've set a realistic time frame. Maybe it's a week, maybe it's 30 days, maybe it's 90 days. It depends on the behavior, it depends on the situation, but it's important that you set a time frame, that you put it on the calendar and you say, okay, we're gonna get to this change by this time, and here are the steps along the way to make sure that we're making progress. Define or talk about the consequences. Maybe there is a clear consequence of if this change isn't made. Most of the time it's more abstract. It's not about being fired or terminated or losing responsibility. It's that it's having an impact on their ability to advance in some more general way. How you end a boundary conversation really depends on the person and what they're working on and what stage they're at in their own development. In some situations, you might decide that this person needs a little bit of encouragement. In other situations, you might realize that's the worst possible thing that you can do, and you actually need to stay quiet and wait and have it be a little bit cooler in the space between you. As you work on these skills and all the steps in the accountability dial, especially when it comes to the conversation and the boundary, you'll start to find that sweet spot of where you need to be a little bit more engaged and perhaps a little bit more supportive, and where you need to step back a little bit and wait a little bit longer for people to make that change. When you're thinking about the boundary, it's understandable to make the connection to consequences. But the boundary is not about choosing between consequence A or consequence B or making a threat of any kind. It's simply an acknowledgement that there are consequences. You have nothing to gain from shifting your tone to being the boss or being in charge or being angry or frustrated. Keep your tone positive. You can be firm, you can be direct, but still acknowledge that behavioral change is difficult. Sometimes that's a great moment to share vulnerably as a leader, especially when somebody's working on something that's really challenging for them to change. The most important part is you showing up as a leader and demonstrating your ongoing, persistent, vigilant care that this person actually changes this behavior, that you're invested in their growth. So let's go back to our friend Jeff and his struggle to get his timesheets in on time. We've made a mention, didn't work. We had the invitation and we tried to talk about a pattern of behavior and it had a little bit of effect, but he backslid. We had the conversation and we talked about impacts and it seemed like he really got it, but now it's slid back again. And we're having the boundary conversation with Jeff. And we've talked about specifically what does it mean. In this case, it's pretty easy. It's getting the timesheets in on time. Second is the time frame. In this case with Jeff, it's immediate. It has to happen. And now we're into defining the consequence. You might know in this instance that Jeff is looking for a promotion or to take on some other larger role in the organization. And this might be a moment where you have a conversation around what the standards are to show up as a leader in that next level. And this is a place that's really basic that he has to be able to handle before you can consider him for that next role. The way to know if you've done the boundary well is in the response of the person that you're talking with. You should see a heightened sense of urgency. Maybe the feedback that you've been trying to give for the mention and the invitation and the conversation, you see or sense that it finally lands, or they say something or ask some different questions. So don't focus so much on the content of the conversation, focus more on the receiving end. You've already gone through 3 steps in the accountability dial to raise this subject and to talk about it. Maybe this is the moment where it gets through.